Okay, so as a review, no, for last time, we're able to introduce the different biomolecular families, no, the classes of biomolecules. We have the proteins, the nucleic acids, carbohydrates, and lipids. These are the basic class of organic families that you can find, or biomolecules in particular, that you can find in biological systems. So aside from these four classes of biomolecules, there is also a number of other molecular entities that are essential to living systems, like the organic metabolites, inorganic ions and metals, and of course, water. But again, as I mentioned in the previous chapter or in the previous discussion, that the major classes are this four, and we will be, yes.
Nawala ang search screen mo.
Huh?
Nawala imong share
Nawala.
screen. Kana ma'am naan na.
Okay, as mentioned before again, these are the four classes of biomolecules: the proteins, nucleic acids, carbohydrates, and sugars. And all of these are made up of repeating units for each particular biomolecules. For instance, when we talk of proteins, there is a repeating unit, which are the amino acids residues. For nucleic acids, that is where our DNA or RNA comes from. There are also repeating units called nucleotides. For sugars or polysaccharides, there's also a repeating unit, sugars, sugar residues such as glucose and simpler sugars. And for fats, lipids, and membranes, the larger unit cells, the repeating units can be fatty acids, or the smaller units. And so each of this will be talking for each chapter. And if you can reach, then we will be talking on the metabolic pathways, the reactions of all these classes of organic molecules. But again, we have to remember that in biological systems, majority actually is made up of water, and 15% would only account for proteins, and 1 to 6%, 1% for the DNA, 6% for the RNA, 3% for the polysaccharides, fats, lipids for 2%, and others will be 3%. But majority of biological systems actually made up of water. So for today, in fact, when we're talking of the organs, like for example, skeletal muscles, heart, liver, kidney, it's more than 70%. The composition of organs in our system, are greatly made up of water. And the rest then will be the biomolecules, as we mentioned, the proteins, nucleic acids, polysaccharides, lipids. So 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the four biomolecules, and then the other ions, like intermediate ions, or monomeric side units and organic ions. Okay, so in fact, we are just mostly in this space. So we will focus now for today's discussion on the proteins. Now we'll be discussing first proteins, and so I have 95 slides here. I'll just change the semester here. Okay. Actually, I have already uploaded, but I'm using the different laptop today. Naghang siya. Ay, naghang akong PowerPoint. I think I have too much applications. Okay, so wait a minute. Naghang ang akong laptop, no? It's I think I have too much applications and by the way, I have to be reminded next meeting will have a short quiz. So okay, it's already here. By the way, I have a question. Are all of you already vaccinated?
Yes, ma'am.
Fully vaccinated.
Yeah, because the university requires students not to be vaccinated before you are allowed to go inside the campus. And we had a meeting last time for a face-to-face session. And supposedly we should, can you see my screen? Supposedly we should be having our face-to-face now, but the university is not yet ready, so it's gonna be on the first semester now of the 2022 to 2023 school year. So if you can see my screen, we're gonna be talking about proteins today. So these are the outline, no? What are the functions of proteins? What are the amino acids, deuterions? What determines the characteristics of amino acids and so on? So our friends, you can find that on Bettelheim, no, the one that I shared in the elements. You can click on the link. Okay, so here on the pics, you can see on the light produced by fireflies. No, you can see the fireflies. You can see kanang so maybe besides the fireflies. Basta fireflies, no, kanang sa ngit and then flying insects na would emit light. Those are fireflies. You can see aninipot the area. It's the result of the is this one being recorded? Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So here is an example of a reaction involving protein luciferin. Okay, from the word luciferin, no, it means light and ATP, and catalyzed by the enzyme luciferase, and the byproduct of that is the light. And here naman is the cell structures of erythrocytes. Protein contains large amounts of the oxygen transporting protein, hemoglobin. These are what the analysts rather, some medical analysts. I don't know how you call them when they see your blood cells. And this naman is the protein keratin kaning horns formed by all the vertebrates, is a chief structural component of hair, scales, horns, wools, nails, feathers. Kaya sa inyong mga nails. No? Those are examples of proteins. No? The one that makes your hair beautiful longer is because also of the protein keratin. Feathers also are proteins. No? And of course, we're also made up of proteins. Kaya nga lang, how much is that? I have mentioned, I think it's about 15% lang. No? We are made up of protein. So it is remarkable to note that cells can actually produce proteins with striking different properties and activities by joining the same 20 amino acids. You can just imagine that the different properties. For example, here the erythrocytes are like it's very soft. Can find this in our blood, no? Due to the protein hemoglobin. There is a different properties. You can look at our hair, you know, it's made up of protein, or nails. The nails and the hairs, they like look differently, and running out of time. You can just click on the tatong akong gisend sa inyo na link, and because it will cut every 30 to 40 minutes. So the protein, the keratin also you can find in horns. It would have a different structure. So imagine the differences in the kinds of protein when there's only 20 amino acids, the basic structural unit of proteins. So by changing the consequences and combinations of the basic unit of protein, we call that amino acids. Imagine we produce, or nature produce, different proteins with striking different properties. And of course, thanks to our creator, no, for his genius for creating a variety of materials having different properties, no? And of course, with these different properties of proteins, or these different proteins, it comes with functions. The functions of us having hemoglobin in our blood, no, would be different to the functions of the keratin protein we can find in our hair, our nails, and all other types of proteins. So from the 20 amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, different organisms can make such wide diverse products. Examples, no? We can have enzymes, transporters, hormones, muscle fibers, kanang muscles. We have the horns, that an example earlier sa picture. We can also have antibodies, no? When we are fighting diseases, for example, the virus, no? And all other microorganisms that would try to invade our body. We have the antibodies made up of proteins, the T cells, no? Also, kind of antibodies made up of proteins, the one that would fight against the COVID, no? Feathers for birds, even the spider webs, no? Those are made up of proteins. The milk that we get, the drink, and the milk that the mothers produce are made up of protein. Antibiotics. Yeah, there can be some amino acids, no, that's being indicated there. Mushrooms, what else? The lens protein of the eye, no, those are proteins. So among these protein products, the enzymes are the most varied and specialized. In our body, in our system, no, in the cells, no, virtually all cellular reactions are catalyzed by enzymes. So kanang body processes are actually catalyzed by enzymes. Without the enzymes, the reactions would take like probably thousands of years, no? But thanks to the enzymes, it hastens and facilitates the reactions, that the reactions in our body are made easy. Proteins are the most biological macromolecules, most abundant rather biological macromolecules occurring in all cells and all parts of the cells. If you remember the structure of the cells, then probably in the next meeting, I'm going to give a quiz on that introduction. Proteins also occur in great variety, thousands of different kinds ranging in size from relatively small peptides to huge polymers with molecular weights in millions. Now imagine the molecular weights in millions may be found in a single cell. So in a cell, you can find proteins, and that would have varying molecular weights. Imagine that. Moreover, proteins exist in a most diversity of biological functions and are the most important final products of the information pathways. In fact, it is also the proteins that would also the molecular instruments through which the genetic information is expressed. You know, when we synthesize or when our cells synthesize the genetic information, DNA and RNA, it is also through with proteins. No? Proteins are the one that made way for the synthesis of nucleic acids. Okay. What else? All proteins, whether from the most ancient lines of bacteria or from the most complex forms of life, are constructed from the same ubiquitous set of 20 amino acids. So there are only 20 amino acids that make up our proteins, but this can be formed with different sequences, okay, and different lengths, and it will lead to different forms and structures of proteins. So because of this, amino acids has a side chain with distinctive chemical properties. This group of 20 precursors molecules may be regarded as the alphabet in which the language of protein structure is written. Okay, so I've always been talking about this amino acids. So in the next few slides, we're going to look at the structures of the amino acids. So before that, we'll get a larger picture of what are the functions of proteins. So the first function of proteins, as I've mentioned, we've mentioned earlier, of the broader class of proteins, which are the enzymes. Again, the one that catalyzes the cellular reactions in the living systems. One of the functions is catalysis, of course. It accelerates thousands of biological reactions from processes such as digestion. When we ingest food, and when it gets to the stomach, there is an enzyme there that disintegrates the larger proteins, carbohydrates that we take, and it will be digested to smaller molecules, bio or organic molecules or simpler proteins, simpler carbohydrates in our stomach, and then distributed and be used, converted for energy, and distributed, and all the other smaller biomolecules distributed to the different organs of the body. So enzymes catalyze energy capture also for biosynthesis. The second function of proteins is the structure. So some proteins provide protection and support. Example are the collagen. The collagen are the major component of connective tissues, kanang pilo-pilo mo sa inyong kamot and tiil. Okay, those are made up of collagen. There's a protein there near the bones. Sa inyong bone structure, it's made up of collagen. It's the major component of the connective tissue. Fibrin is the silk protein. And then elastin is a rubber-like protein found in several tissues in the body, such as blood vessels and skin. So this kind of proteins would have a function for support and structure. Another function is the movement. For example, proteins that are involved in cell movements, such as cell division, endocytosis, exocytosis, and the amoeboid movement of white cells. Okay, such as actin and tubulin. So those are another functions of proteins. Remember, when the cell, part of the cell, when it it would do endocytosis. There is a protein involved when we do cell movements. Even as no, there is when we move our muscles, there is also another protein that would do that would allow for the elasticity of all the muscles. Another function of protein is defense, and a wide variety of proteins, of course, are protective. So example now for defense are the antibodies or immunoglobulins. They are produced by lymphocytes in foreign organisms such as bacteria invades our organisms. We also have fibrinogen and thrombin. They are found when our blood do blood clotting proteins or produce blood clotting proteins that prevent blood loss when blood vessels are damaged. No? Remember kung masamad mo, there is that one that's being produced. Ito ka ng mga clot. And then we have the keratin found in skin cells that aids in protecting the organisms against mechanical and chemical injury. So we have that in our nails, in our hairs. Those are for defense, actually, in the horns. And the last one function of proteins is regulation, where we can find this function when a certain hormone binding a hormone molecule, it's a molecule to its target cell, changes its cellular functions. You have to change this. For example, insulin